Watch out, let me get a shot. Where they at? Where they at?
Put on that rooftop. Hey! Give me a fucking 42 in the United States!
We're east of the riverbed. And, we're taking fire from the west. Roger, stand by, we're popping smoke. Gun runs north and south, west of the smoke, west of the smoke.
Okay, copy. West of the smoke. I'm looking at danger close now.
Give it to me, I need it. You're cleared hot.
Copy, cleared hot.
Welcome to the Combat Leadership Podcast. Here's our host, Mike Etor.
Asad Khan, welcome, my friend. How are you?
Hey, Mike, doing great. Thank you.
Thank you for showing up once again, and listeners and viewers here. This is part 3 of Asad Khan, and Asad has really dropped some great, insights, bits of wisdom, and all of that in parts 1 and part 2. So if you just found part 3, this is the first one you're being exposed to Asad Khan, I strongly recommend that you go back, on the YouTube channel and find Asad Khan Part 1 and Part 2. They are labeled, and excellent content so far. So Asad, with that, you did drop a lot of good stuff in the first 2, and particularly in this Part 2, you went at length about your battalion and things that you did and emphasized before combat, but you really talked a lot about operating in Afghanistan, chasing the Taliban, and how you did a lot of individual discretion, getting equipment to your guys and all of that. So if you would indulge me, I would like to talk, now that everybody knows from part 1 and part 2, how you operate, what your philosophy was, how the battalion ran, and of course what they did. I mean, they did phenomenal. That's beyond debate. That you were a really great combat leader, and your battalion kicked ass to an extraordinary degree, like few others, quite frankly. And that rep is out there, and I know you're self-deprecating and you're not going to say anything about it, but you'll give the credit to your Marines, which deservedly so. But I heard, of course, I've heard about you for years. We've talked about that when I came on your podcast. We've never met in person and all that. Yeah. And then the reports started coming in about you in Afghanistan. I belong to a couple large email groups, Marine email groups, and I'm like, yes, I've heard about this guy for years, and it seems like it's legit because he's doing this. So anyway, I don't mean to embarrass you and all that, but I'd like to ask you, now that you've set the tone, the landscape, and this was the end result, what you guys were capable of doing on there, I'd like to talk about a few different things, and those are mental toughness, developing mental toughness and the warrior spirit, we call it. Physical conditioning, because it was a very physically demanding environment, and you guys did it well. And you know better than me, some units did not do it well. They were not prepared for that daily grind at altitude. And I know for a fact, by talking to some people, the physical limitations of the Marines and soldiers in a unit, or sadly, even worse, the physical limitations of the leader or leaders, often limited the aggressiveness and fighting spirit, willingness to engage, because hey, I'm the leader, I'm tired, I'll make up an excuse why we're not going any further tonight or something like that. So mental toughness, physical conditioning, and of course a big one, training for combat. You did it well, and you've got a lot of wisdom to drop. And then I'd like to wrap it up by asking about casualties. Your unit did take casualties, and we don't talk about this a lot. I was not really prepared for it. How did casualties, friendly casualties, affect your Marines? Did it have any, would you have done anything differently and things like that? So without further ado, based on everything you've told us before, let's talk about Asad Khan's, aggressive battalion, mentally tough, resilient, refuse to lose mentality. How did you develop that in individual Marines, and how did you develop it unit-wise? And as important, how were you able to maintain that mental toughness, the warrior spirit, in sustained combat?
Yeah, I mean, and I'll start with the casualty part to just use it as an example about Sergeant Vigiani, squad leader, I believe from New Jersey. And in training, he always kind of stood out. And as a commander, as a trainer, you're always wondering, how would this guy do in combat? And V-Man is a squad leader, and we get in a gunfight, and up in the mountains, big rocks, and there's an enemy machine gun position in a cave. So Vigiani's assaulting up towards the cave with his squad, and he's going to go around and drop a grenade in. Well, he forgot his grenade. He needed a grenade, so another Marine had it. So he went back down, got the grenade, in the process gets shot and drops the grenade, neutralizes the enemy position. So I hear on the radio that Vigiani's been shot. I was at another location on the same mountain. So I make my way over there, and Vigiani's laying there, and I was like, hey, V-Man, we'll get a medevac in here and get you out. He's like, sir, I ain't going anywhere. I'm like, what? And this is what he said. He said, sir, please do not order me. I don't want to disobey you. I'll be all right. Now, that is mental toughness. That is tenacity. Vigiani ultimately ended up getting a Navy Cross and retired as a gunner in the Marine Corps, right? Now, how do you build that? How do you build that tenacity, that pride, that relentless pursuit of excellence, and this leader that doesn't want to leave his squad? He stayed with us. I said, roger that, no problem. We had triage units and all that following us, and they took care of them. No issues, right? So how do you do it? And the way you do it is, it's like being a fighter. You just don't hop in the rink without all the training. For a 5-round, 10-round, 15-round fight, it's you probably have to do it 10 times the amount of training, right? Given the time that you're going to fight. So it's the same thing applies in combat. And that's the mindset we had. And I told my Marines, I said, let me tell you something. You're going to find combat easier than our training. And I meant it. And if you ask them, yeah, certain parts were harder, but certain parts were easier, right, in combat, because we trained for it with this relentless pursuit of excellence. And I'm not just throwing out freaking platitudes here. What I'm talking about is you got to have a physical fitness program. You got to have a program that, not only where the companies can train every day and there's an expectation of them to do physical fitness every day. And I'd be out there in the mornings in the quad and watching these companies do their calisthenics, and I'd join one of the companies in the back, right? And Sergeant Major would go another one, the XO would go another one. See how they're doing, right? And so everybody knew, hey, the boss is out here supervising training. That's my job. But I'm not leading it. I'm watching the company commanders lead it. I'm watching the first sergeants lead it and the company gunnery sergeants lead it, right? And then every Friday, there'd be a battalion evolution, right? Either a battalion run, and the next Friday would be a battalion load march. And on that Friday, I would typically run 3 to 5 miles. The Marines knew this. There's no secrets. I'm going to run you, today we're going to run 3 miles in flak jackets and boots, okay? Today, we may run 5 miles in just PT uniform. And this is the pace I'm going to keep, and I expect you to stay with me. If you don't stay with me, you fall out. I'll see you tomorrow for remedial PT, and your whole chain of command is going to be here. So there was a standard. Everybody had to meet it, including myself. So that was, and for the load marches, it's very simple. Under load 12 to 20 miles, every other week. So we maintained focus on that. And it paid off in spades, because what was happening was, you mentioned some other units. I really can't comment on it because that's their commander's call. The Marines started getting a sense of pride that, hey, we just train a little bit harder. We run a little bit more. When I was a company commander in 1-2 in Denny Hillick's battalion, I would run my company through the battalion CP. And it would piss off everybody, to include the battalion commander. You know, he looks like, what the hell are you doing running through this? I said, sir, it's for motivation. Come join us next time. You know, and, you know, the road guys would go open the doors and you're, you know, singing cadence.
Oh, you actually ran through the CP?
Ran through the damn thing. I didn't give a shit. You know,
I love it.
Alpha company doors, they'd open, we'd run right through their freaking company office, you know? And people are like, holy shit, you know? But Marines eat that shit up. You know what I'm talking about.
Yeah,
you know, that's what builds pride. We had other little things, little trinkets, right? Where on their helmets, everybody wore that little cami net, and you had to earn it. You had to earn that little cami net on your helmet. And if you didn't perform well, you know, your unit leader, somebody go take your cami net off, and you stood out like a damn sore thumb. So these little things also matter, right? How to build pride, how to build esprit. The Army's really good at that. They give you a Ranger tab, they give you this, and, you know, the Marine Corps does it with jump wings and, you know, the bubble and all that. But for a normal infantryman, he's got nothing to be, you know, to grab onto. And then we got these stupid commandants that come out with this bullshit recruiting crap that says every Marine's a rifleman. You know, what a freaking insult that is. Think about this. Yeah. You know, think about it. It takes a year to build train a pilot. And I tell you this much, it takes a year to build a rifleman. It's not easy stuff. If you truly want to become a master of fieldcraft at infantry, it's going to take you about a year. But we say, hey, just because, you know, some Marine goes on the rifle range and shoots, you know, once a year, he's a rifleman. Yeah, he knows how to operate a rifle, but I guarantee you, he ain't a rifleman. He wouldn't survive freaking 3 days in a Marine infantry battalion. So we sort of discount the infantry. So part of the commander's responsibility is not only to train them, to make them, you know, physical fitness is the foundation of mental toughness. So the commander's got to make them tough. And then the other thing is the commander's got to reward them and instill pride in them. And I think that was so important in the Marines, and they still remember that. And when we go on load marches, I would have this sound system. And in fact, some Marine just wrote to me that, sir, used to play Eye of the Tiger. We hated it, but I still remember it, right? And you know, because my genre of music was a bit different than the young Marines was, right? But you know, we'd have a Humvee following us, these big ass speakers cranking the music up as we're humping through Camp Lejeune, and everybody knew that, you know, 1-6 is coming through. Get out of the way. So that built pride, right? Build esprit. It created a standard that we're just a little bit better than everybody else, and that paid off in spades. So commanders got to come up with, you know, innovative ways, but you got to have a standard, and you got to be relentless about it, and you got to participate in it. You know, there's some commanders would come out, and I've seen it with my own eyes. You know, our green PT shirt, they would have it untucked. Now, why do you think they have it untucked, Mike? Because they're fat. They're hiding their gut, right? And the Marines see this shit. And then you're going to tell the Marines that, hey, you got to be tough. You know, I'll tell you what, a commander has to, you know, establish that bar, and, you know, and you're not going to be the toughest guy in a battalion. It ain't going to happen, but you better be in the top 10%. And the Marines respect that, you know, and you have to lead by example. You got to be tenacious. You got to be relentless. You got to be physically fit, and you got to be mentally tough. And all these things that I talked about paid off in spades in Afghanistan. You know, we didn't have any issues with physical fitness or mental toughness. Those Marines did absolutely phenomenal in the mountains of Afghanistan, as I mentioned about Sergeant Vigiani, later on Gunner Vigiani. And he's just one of many examples that I can give you, and we'll talk about that when we get to casualties.
Well, thank you for that. I want to interject a few things. Well, I know the legend of Vigiani. Don't know him,
okay,
you know. I didn't know that was your battalion until you mentioned him. But I remember reading about it and all that, and I remember reading a citation. I'm like, damn, you know. So obviously, well deserved. So I've got kind of and I hope I get the right answer from you. When you put him up for a Navy Cross, Asad, did any upper echelon REMPs try to dispute you on that, thinking it really wasn't a Navy Cross? Did you get any feedback, or was the citation such to where nobody could argue with it?
Actually, it got upgraded. I put them in for a Silver Star, you know, and it went up, and Nav saw that they read it, very well written, you know, and and they upgraded it to Navy Cross. Their board did, or whatever the hell they had.
I'm so glad to hear that, because I actually had that experience too. Two of my attached tow gunners in Desert Storm, and I think I explained on your podcast, most of Desert Storm, the ground units didn't fire a shot.
Yeah.
But I was in 1-8, and we were the right flank battalion of the 2nd Marine Division, and believe it or not, 1st Division was pushing Iraqis toward us. They didn't know we were there, and we actually got into some scraps. So anyway, I had tow gunners and dragon gunners that really did bang, not empty tanks. These tanks were running. Right. They were running away. And so I knew they had done really well, these two Marines, and I put them in for Bronze Stars with V. The colonel said, absolutely. It went up to Van Riper, General Van Riper, who's no softy at all on awards. Yeah. Yeah. And he upgraded them both to Silver Stars. So awesome. I think there were 4 Silver Stars in the 2nd Marine Division, and one of them was, I think, Jay Solis, who was an artillery battalion commander that ran out into a minefield to pick up one of his guys. Probably shouldn't have done that, but he did it, and he got it. I mean, great guy, and I knew Jay. He was a great officer. Retired as a colonel. The other one was actually a former 1-8 lieutenant peer of mine named Ken Amadon, who was an LAV company commander, and evidently him and Dennis Green and some other guys I knew, they went across the berm early and were just raising hell, drawing fire, probing. And evidently the Marines came back and said, hey, to Lieutenant Colonel Holcomb, who was later Brigadier General Holcomb, hey, sir, this guy's really, and so he wrote him up and it stuck. And then the other 2 were my guys, 2 corporals, Silver Stars, and I'm still in contact with both of them, So the reason why I'm deviating on this is I'm so glad that there are leaders that saw, no, I mean, Assad's trying to do the guy right here. It's more than a Silver Star. Great. Who are you to argue? If competent authorities with a little bit more award savvy than you say it's a Navy Cross, it's a Navy Cross. Because that's one of the ones, we've seen in the Marine Corps, Assad, shakiness in awards. But you rarely see a shaky Navy Cross and Medal of Honor. Rarely, Now, the reason why I'm going with this and what I'm trying to maybe train the younger guys here, I have had experiences in a combat environment where you put a guy in for an award, put a guy in for a Bronze Star with V one time, a Lance Corporal who truly deserved it, and it got waylaid. It went all the way up through the division, approved.
All right.
And in fact, I think it was Al Gray that might have approved it. So you got Al Gray saying, yeah, this kid deserves a Bronze Star. It gets to headquarters of Marine Corps, and it languishes for almost a year. And we find out that it's coming back as a Navy comm with V. And I alerted Ray Smith, who was now at headquarters Marine Corps, the battalion commander, and the bottom line is justice was served. But I remember talking to some REMF up at headquarters Marine Corps, and I was a captain. No, in fact, I was a captain, home from Beirut. A lieutenant. So I called him, I think he's a major working somewhere, and he said, hey, Lieutenant, a Navy comm with V for a Lance Corporal is a pretty big deal. And I'm like, well, sir, I couldn't believe it. Hey, you should be just shut up. He's just a Lance Corporal. That's a big deal. Not many Lance Corporals running around with a Navy comm with V. I said, but we give PFCs Medal of Honor if they rate it. What the hell is that? And he wasn't listening. And that's when I made the move to tell Smith. And Smith went up there and raised hell. And of course, his gravitas was so heavy that award got fixed because they knew if we don't fix it, he's going to the 3-star. Who they served in Way City together, and he's going to fix this right. So I wanted to deviate. Relative to setting expectations, we're talking to the younger guys here, and I want to share a personal anecdote with me. So I was in Fox 2-8, and I was the only former enlisted officer, the only former enlisted platoon commander. So I had a lot more savvy than the other guys. They were good guys, but right out of Quantico. And we would go on some pretty stiff humps as a battalion and as a company. And my standard with these guys, I would tell them, look, I know you see other guys, other platoons and other companies dropping out.
Right.
We're just not, we don't do that. We don't do that. I guarantee you, the only way you're going to see Lieutenant Etor drop out is if he's unconscious or dead.
Right.
But I ain't dropping out. And we never had a drop on a hump or a run simply because I set the standard and said, we don't do that. And other units unfortunately did. And I would tell them, what was it? What was it, Marines? We were on the same hump. What was it that 6 guys, 5 guys, 4 guys from these other platoons dropped out? They couldn't do it, yet nobody here dropped out. Are we in that much better physical condition than them? It's all up here, so we started developing that. Yeah. I share this, Asad, and as you know, not about how good I was, but it was the standard I knew to set, and the standard you set. Sometimes the standard needs to be set so people know, okay, that's the standard. I'm not saying that you're not going to be hurting on one of those humps. Hell, I was hurting on them, but dropping out, not going to happen. So my point is, if you're the leader, set high standards. Even if your commander doesn't, you personally set high standards for yourself and high standards for your Marines. And I want to segue into this with a question. I know what your answer is going to be. Obviously, you set high physical standards, and it's just implied. You didn't even mention it because it's implied. Well, we had high standards for the battalion, which means you have high standards for your leaders, NCOs, staff NCOs, and officers. Of course, if we have high standards for the battalion, we can't have any leaders lagging behind in these runs or dropping out. So I know you agree with that. Did you ever have an issue with a leader lagging behind physically, not showing people what right looked like when it came to physical fitness and endurance? And if so, what'd you do about it?
Yeah. So, well, just the awards thing, so there's a phase where we fought for 17 days straight, right? On that, and that 17 days straight, individuals could have been awarded 2 or 3 Bronze Stars. I know for a fact one lieutenant could have been awarded 2 or 3 Silver Stars, and we put them in for 1. And the reason being is there's so many events happening, there's so much going on, and you kind of just, on the back of a piece of cardboard or something, you're just writing down just to keep track of this stuff, right? So we gave out over 100 combat awards. And I know not everybody was happy because everybody thinks that they did more and all that, but you got to equalize everything, right? And what happens is when you put something up, and if a Navy, if a Silver Star becomes a Navy Cross, then does that mean everything gets bumped up? I don't know, but judiciously, I think whoever got an award, they earned it. We just didn't give them out, and not everybody's always happy because everybody thinks that they did more and they should have been recognized. And and I understand that. I get it. And that's one of the tough calls in terms of the awards, right? But in terms of the battalion, PT and stuff, as you mentioned. I think that if somebody does well, if a company doesn't have any drops on a run or on a hike, there's nothing wrong with giving them early liberty or giving them a 72. You got to reward them, right? There's got to be something dangling at the end. And so they'll just try that much harder. So I think that's very important also. Now, in regards to staff NCOs and officers, not meeting the mark. Yeah, we had a couple, but I'll tell you what, they didn't last too long. And the reason being is because they were uncovered, right? And 1-6 has a motto going all the way back to, I believe, World War II. It's called 1-6 hard, right? You had to be hard in 1-6. That's just the nature of the battalion. And every battalion has that. I understand that. When I came to the battalion, I guarantee you the bar got raised, and it was shock treatment. Some of these people, they had the stunned mullet look because they weren't in shape, and they were counseled, and they attended remedial PT. I didn't give a shit what rank you were. You fell out of my run, you're going to attend remedial PT. And they were counseled and given a time to, hey, get your ass in shape. And, this better not happen again because you're losing credibility very rapidly. And the ones that got in shape were fine. The ones that didn't, quite frankly, they found a way out of the battalion very quickly. And we had a couple of those. And even on load marches and stuff, they play this old excuse, right? They're falling behind and the gap is getting longer and longer. And they give you the old excuse, sir, the company in front of you is running. I don't give a shit what they're doing. If they're running, stay up, stay connected. So you got to be really intense about it. I, as a battalion commander, I would go all the way back to the formation while we're marching to make sure, see how everybody's doing, to get that feel for everybody. And that meant that I had to, hump a little bit faster or the slow shuffle to get back to the front of the battalion. And those are the things you got to do. And it motivates the crap out of the Marines, too, I think. So you can't tolerate, the standard applies to everybody. There's no exceptions whatsoever, none whatsoever.
Yeah, I absolutely agree with that. So it sounds to me, Asad, that as you see it, the physical training that you ran these guys through, among other things that we'll talk about, that had a direct impact on the development of mental toughness and fighting spirit and all of that.
Yeah.
And so I don't want to put words in your mouth, but I want to make sure that the young guys out there listening to this understand that, I don't know anyone that actually conducted mental toughness classes, In my day, there wasn't that, but now there's all sorts of books on mental toughness. It's become a topic. So I do think you can learn about it academically, but I would just say, I want to get your opinion. I don't care whatever environment you're in. You cannot become mentally tough just by reading about it. You got to do things that make you physically and mentally out of your comfort zone. Because that's, I'll give you an example. I was never a fast runner. On my best day at 215, 220 pounds, I could run. On my best day, the best I ever ran on a PFT was at like a 1913. That was extraordinary for me. I've been hauling a lot of beef, and all that.
You'd make it in 1.6. You'd make it in 1.6. My standard was 20.
Yeah, but my point is this: no matter what, and I got older and injured. I had knee operations from college wrestling, but my standard was I crossed that line exhausted. And I share this. I want to get your thought because I know you've been there. I don't know if you've thought about it like this. All through my life as a physical training guy, especially with running, I would run. Now, sometimes I say, no, it's a slow run today. But if I was going to go balls out, it was at that point when my legs and lungs started burning and that voice started saying, this is hard. You've done enough. And that's where the contest begins. That's where the contest begins. And only I would know if I caved in under the pain or if I kept going for another 10 minutes or however, another 2 miles or whatever the case may be. I don't think and I want to hear your opinions, I don't think you can develop mental toughness, the kind we're looking for in ground combatants, warriors, without doing things that cause them physically and mentally to reach that perceived breaking point in their ability to push past it. Your thoughts?
I think, the mental toughness is not just physical toughness, right? Mental toughness is a whole new plane.
Yes.
And the best example I can give you, when I was a 2nd Marines, we used to go to Bridgeport, right? Everybody's done Bridgeport. But we would get another added month of cold weather training. We'd go to Alaska, Fort Greely, Alaska. And I'll tell you this much, in the wintertime, the temperature would be -40 because we had the shitty little mercury thermometer or whatever the hell it was, thermometers. Is that what they call them? Thermometers for the weather? The temperature gauges. They would only go down to minus 40. I have no idea what it was at nighttime, right? And you're out there in the Arctic Circle freezing your ass off. And I've seen some of the most physically fit, muscle-bound guys just break down. I mean, literally throw their weapon down and start walking, in the tundra, frozen tundra. And the Marines would, say, sir, do you want us to go get them? I said, no, let them walk. Either the bears will get them, which they won't because they're asleep in the winter. And the Marine would walk 300 to 500 meters, and he realized there ain't no way out of it. And the only place where he's going to be warm and taken care of, he's got to go back to the company area, turn around, and come back. And then you give him some, make some soup for him or something, warm him up, give him a little pep talk and all that stuff. But my point is, mental toughness is a mindset where you don't complain, you don't show weakness, you don't become a prey. You got to be this predator mindset. That's mental toughness. If you see Marines complaining and stuff, you need to talk to them about it. Hey, gents, you got to be mentally tough. You don't bitch and moan and all that stuff. And just like in Afghanistan, when we did all this preparation, for almost 4 months, these Marines didn't change uniforms, didn't take showers, they're sleeping in the dirt, and nobody bitched. And I'm sure they may have amongst each other, but it was no outright bitching and all that stuff, right? And because they're focused like laser beams. And that's the type of mental toughness one has to develop. And to this day, I tell people, don't show weakness. Do not show weakness. And I say it to grown men. I said, you're a man. You're not a pregnant woman. Don't complain. Don't bitch. Suck it up and just do it, because I'll tell you what. And, I've been to a lot of safaris. I do that a lot. I go to Africa and I watch animals and animal behavior. And as soon as you show weakness, guess what? You're going to be somebody's meal. And the same thing applies, I believe, in the military, and the same thing applies in life. Do not be a man. Do not show weakness, and don't frickin' complain. That's one of the problems that, we've got this touchy-feely, culture that we've developed, and everybody wants to be frickin' unisex. I'm a man. That's the bottom line. And I'm far different. And I go to some of these malls and shit, and you see men putting on frickin' lip gloss. I mean, you got to be freaking shitting me. The only cosmetic thing that I do is I use freaking coconut oil. I rub it in my face. I rub it in my hair, and that's it. I cut my own hair. I don't even go to a freaking salon or barber or whatever the hell they call it, right? Because that's a manly way of doing it. Now, maybe I'm like a Neanderthal man and all that shit, but it works for me. So, a person has to look himself in the mirror and ask the question, are you a man? How can I be a better man? How can I be a stronger man? How can I be a better example for my children, right? How can I be a better example for my grandchildren? Because they have to look up to a man, not this unisex, I'm a he, they, she, he, we, and all this nonsense, which I don't freaking understand. Yeah. That's where I am.
No, I agree. And I have a little trivia for you that I don't think you know about. 1-6 Hard. Yeah. That name originated in World War I.
Okay, yeah.
And I want you to write this down and research this guy. And for the audience out there, there was an officer named John Hughes.
Yeah.
And his nickname was Johnny the Hard.
Yeah.
And when you read about this guy's career, he would never make it in today's Marine Corps, obviously.
Yeah, neither would I.
But
yeah.
This guy, Asad, we both want to be like this guy when we grow up. Where do you read about this guy? It's incredible.
I forgot about him. I remember when everybody checked in, they had to read about him. I remember that. I mean,
Johnny the Hard. So my point in saying this is, here was a guy whose persona, he was Johnny the Hard before he took over 1-6 in World War II and World War I.
Right.
He was Johnny the Hard years before that because of his reputation in combat, and he was drinking and fighting and all that. Insubordinate, he was Naval Academy graduate too, But my point is this: when he came to his battalion, they were so proud of the fact that their battalion commander was Johnny the Hard that they adopted that motto, and everybody that wrote about it said the battalion's morale lifted overnight Like
Yeah.
we're in Johnny the Hard's battalion, you know.
Yeah.
And he got wounded in World War One. Part of his tibia was sticking out of the flesh, and he refused to get evacuated.
Yeah,
He just,
absolutely.
in fact, I think the legend has it he actually reached down and broke it off and kept going, you know? So my point in saying in this legendary figure and all of that, all verified really, but again, to the younger guys, never underestimate the impact of an individual that displays the attitude and fierceness and drive and willingness to engage on everybody else. Guys like that in a warrior environment are contagious in the best sense.
Yes.
Your thoughts? And it doesn't
I
have to
agree
be
with you.
officers. It's not always
Let me
officers.
just talk about Johnny the Hard. Let me just talk about Johnny the Hard. When I came to 1-6, you know, and everybody salute you at 1-6 hard, sir. And they weren't hard; they were soft. So one day I took them out and I thrashed them on a PT evolution or something. And I told them, I said, "You're not 1-6 hard, and don't ever use that. Okay? I'll tell you when you're freaking hard." So they weren't allowed to use it. So because they had to re-earn that title. And once we got done with combat operations, we're in Rota, Spain. So I had a dining in or a mess night or something for the troops and everybody, right? And they wanted me to speak. So I get up there. I said, I'm getting chills again. I said, you are 1-6 hard, and don't you let anybody fucking forget that. And I'll tell you what, the place went ape shit. The Marines went nuts, right? Because they knew they'd finally earned my respect, right? And my love and my affection. They always had that, but now they could use it again, right? So I think that's, and it means a lot to the battalion, Then they also have this death walkers, right? Because the Taliban called us death walkers. So now they've got, multiple monikers. But in the sense that, what you're talking about and how to, train people and how to take care of them. It's, there is no magic. There is no answer. You just got to freaking figure it out what works for you and what's going to make your Marines better. That's the bottom line, right? And each unit has different dynamics, has different, different DNA and different environment. What may work at Camp Lejeune is not going to work in Camp Pendleton. But there's fundamental principles of leadership and, leadership traits. And these are frameworks, right? And you got to apply these frameworks to your own circumstance. And I think that's so important. But as a leader, you have to maintain that standard. That's the most important thing, the standard. And as long as you maintain that standard, the Marines will reach that standard. But if you start compromising that standard and you show them allowances, the Marines will know, hey, this guy will cave in, just complain a lot, do this, and he'll just back off. Don't back off. Keep aspiring, keep pushing them to get the next rung on the ladder. I think that's so damn important. And there's no secret to leadership. Everybody's different, but if you genuinely give a shit about people and you live by the standard that you espouse, I think you'll be very successful in any endeavor that you do. But if you're a fraud and you're bullshitting people along the way, you're going to get found, and once you get found, you're done. You have no credibility and you're done. They put you out to pasture, right? And you might, and that's the way I look at it.
Yeah, I agree entirely. Well, going back to, or now, we haven't, you've talked about it already. Now, this is the third episode you're talking about it.
Yeah.
But I'd like to drill down even more, if you'd like to, on training for combat. You just said a bunch of good stuff and all of that. As you know, and most of these guys listening or watching this don't know, even with standard training packages that exist and all that, those packages are executed and absorbed differently depending on the leadership of the units receiving that training, the follow-on, the emphasis and all of that. And not every unit trained like 1-6 hard prior to going to Afghanistan or Iraq. So I don't want to talk about the guys that didn't do it. Talk again about where your focus was and how you developed a very tactically adept battalion. We talked a little bit about the last time about going to the field and doing round robins and things like that. As the battalion commander, you had to prepare a battalion, but I also know you were good and you had to let the captains, the company commanders, run with it too. And you hoped that they would let the lieutenants and squad leaders run with it. So how do you do all this? Because as you know, Asad, some battalion commanders, company commanders, they hold everything close. They have total control over the training schedule in the sense that they dictate everything, and so they don't breed officers with any ingenuity or the ability to create a training plan. So I'll shut up now and see if you have any thoughts on this.
I think I know exactly what you're saying, but unfortunately, where we were in our life cycle, if you got to remember, the battalion came back from Okinawa. We just basically, it was it was fragmented, and we gave up all our experience to other battalions going to Iraq, and then we got the non-deployables in that didn't want to train, and then we made those maintenance platoons out of the non-deployables. There's no point wasting ammunition and training time with these non-deployables, and then we waited for our new crop of young Marines and staff engineers and officers to come in. So we had a very compressed timeline. Normally when a battalion gets 6 months to form as a BLT, we got 3 weeks. So we didn't have time to screw around, right? So basically I'd take whatever my deploying population was, and I'd get them out there training. And I'd get them up to AP Hill. I'd get them out to Verona Loop, whatever it took to get out there and shoot and communicate and move. And what I meant by that is, I talked about the notion that every Marine's a rifleman. To me, it's just insulting. So we talked about that. But the important thing is that unit leaders have to be in front of their formations, and they have to participate in the training. And my singular focus was master the night. Any unit that can operate at night is going to do fantastic at daytime. And we had to master, these are the wave top things, and I'll go into training. We had to master combined arms, because I knew in Afghanistan, it's going to be combined arms. So every squad leader knew how to call for fire, mortar fire, because artillery wasn't going to happen. And he knew how to give a 9-line brief, JTAC brief, right? They sit there and practice that with our FACs and with our air officers ad nauseum. And then the other thing we really emphasized was explaining to them battlefield geometry. This is so damn important. And if you look at the fundamentals of tactics, it's built into it. The forms of maneuver. The forms of maneuver are designed around battlefield geometry. Single envelopment, double envelopment, right? There's a reason for that. Penetration. And you have to sit there and explain to the officers what's the difference between these things. What's the difference between a flank attack and an envelopment? I'm not going to put you on the spot, but there is a difference, right? In the flank attack, the object is the enemy's flank. In an envelopment, you have to bypass the enemy forces to secure an objective behind the enemy, right? So those are the subtle differences. So you really have to think through that and then go out and practice it. And then we had, the training was, I sat down with my staff. We essentially had unlimited ammo. I mean, as I said, we shot over 1 million rounds, so the ammo wasn't the issue. But how are we going to train these units? Brand new Marines coming in, and how are we going to get them all qualified on their weapon systems? So the OERs were very important, and then obviously the tactics. So it was sort of dictated. Here's the training plan, company commander. This is what I want you to execute, and there's going to be evaluators out there to evaluate the training. And then I want you to come back to me and tell me how it went. What are the lessons learned? Because that same training plan is going to go to the next company for the following cycle, right? So they're exchanging training plans and lessons learned and all that stuff. So there's this continuity going on in that. So that was very, very important, I believe. But the problem was this. So when we did the offensive operations, defensive operations, patrolling, movement to contact, MOUT, and all that stuff, all of a sudden we're designated a BLT, and all that shit goes out the window. We spent countless hours writing SOPs. In fact, some of the SOPs that we wrote are still being used by infantry battalion because I just gave them out to everybody. You know, there's the pride and authorship here. If you can use them, good for you. And so once we became a BLT, everything had to be redone. We had to rewrite the SOPs to, a mechanized raid, a helicopter-borne company, trap SOPs and all that stuff. So then we focus on that. Luckily, we had SOTG giving us training packages, right? So the Marines were sort of, and the key with that was you have to make sure the Marines don't get complacent. So I expected unit leaders to participate. Now, what I mean by unit leaders, the staff and sergeant officers, to participate in the training with the SOTG. And, then either my XO, my sergeant major, myself, or the OPSO would be out and about monitoring this training to make sure one of us would always be out with the company to make sure things were being done properly. So it required an excessive amount of supervision. SOTG was very helpful in doing that to help us transition from infantry battalion to BLT. But the standards remained the same. There's no compromise on standards. If a Marine, if a unit was supposed to be on the X at a certain time with certain gear, God help them if they're even missing a freaking pencil. Because that's on the gear list. You make sure you got everything you're supposed to have and you're ready to train. No bullshit, no excuses. And that's the type of intensity you got to have. So once we did that, but there's a requirement for me that we were going to have a quarterly training plan with live fire every other week. Live fire is the most important thing that builds confidence, right? And I'm not just talking get on the firing line, everybody get in the prone and BGR your weapon. You fire movement, fire maneuver. And obviously, as we discussed, goal was to do a company movement to contact at night, culminating with the night live fire night attack. Not easy to do. There's a lot of moving pieces because you're transitioning from, weapons with blanks, and then all of a sudden you have to, make sure all those weapons are cleared, and then, all the BFAs are off, and then the ammo's issued, ammo's loaded, safety briefs are given, and then they go into the night attack phase. And we became pretty damn good at it. And I think that paid off tremendously because it developed muscle memory. The whole idea is to develop muscle memory in the Marines. So it's become second nature. And I wish I could show you some pictures. The best picture I have in combat, there's a SAW gunner, firing his weapon, and his A gunner is tapping him on the back to adjust his rounds, right? And this is in combat. And that's my favorite picture because everything we taught those Marines, they're doing it, muscle memory. He's tapping them. Fantastic, and you just love that shit. So that's where we are, in terms of training.
Yeah, I love that. We've talked in a couple of the previous episodes, and then when I was on your podcast, about the Marine Corps went through a phase, I want to say early 90s, because I was inheriting lieutenants. I reported to 2nd Marine Division in 90 as a captain. And I was inheriting infantry lieutenants from Quantico who had been taught, these were good officers, and they were competent, but they had also been taught to a unrealistic degree that all that mattered was their professional reading. Read. And my lieutenants told me that at IOC, and I know these instructors, they were good guys, but they went off the deep end. Now, I am a professional soldier. I want to talk about that in a bit. I'm leading into that. So I read a lot too. I wasn't like Mattis with 5,000 books, but all I read was military stuff when I was a Marine. I wanted to get better at my craft. But these guys took it to an extraordinary degree. And so I want to ask you, because I know what you're going to say, leaders especially, in peacetime, much less combat, have to be competent in their trade. They must be competent. And they have to know how to do a 9-line brief, a case vac, a medevac plan, mortars, and they just have. I mean, you're nodding your head, of course, and everybody's like, "Well, no shit, Mike. What are you talking about?" But not everybody is. And during that era, these kids came out with an inflated sense of worth that if I read Lee's lieutenants and Rommel and Clausewitz and all these other guys, which I've read them all, there's value to it, that suddenly imbued tactical expertise, which we know is not true. You can learn a lot from it. You can learn a lot from these podcasts we're doing, but you still got to go out and do it. You got to train to do it. You got I listen to this podcast, so I'm automatically better at night attacks because Assad said so and all of that. So I want to ask you this, what's your views on, because I know you're not anti-reading and anti-professional education, and so I say that's critical for a leader. They have to do self-taught stuff, and then there's other stuff that the unit, the Army, the Marine Corps, whatever is going to do it. But the need for everybody to be a professional soldier, and what that really means. You are a professional. If you're a doctor, a profession, Assad, I looked this up, a profession is usually associated with a calling or a job or profession that requires continual study and updated development, like doctors, lawyers, continuing education. Well, as you know, in today's environment, you could read about Afghanistan. You could read about Asad Khan's battalion after actions. You could memorize those things, but it doesn't talk about drones, and some of the modern things. So my point is, study history, learn from it, but you gotta keep up with the current battlefield. Lee's lieutenants ain't shit in the Ukraine right now. There's a lot of lessons coming out there, Now, did both sides lose a shitload of tanks early on because they weren't employing them in a combat arms environment with infantry and artillery and air? Yes, they were. So not all the old lessons are bad. Many of them are very, very good. But those drones were kicking ass, and then now there's counter drone stuff and all that. So I'll shut up, get Asad Khan's rambling of consciousness on being a professional soldier and what that means to you and why.
Reading is critical because you vicariously learn through other people's experiences. But the whole thing is you got to be able to digest what the hell you're reading, and you got to be able to put in practical applications, right? So Lee's lieutenants, the tactics of it may not be applicable. But, as I said, I used Grant's in the Wilderness Campaign, his tactics. I just kept doing a flank attack and just, stayed on the enemy. That's all I kept doing. That was in my mind, right? So I applied it. But the problem is those books are good because they give you leadership lessons, right? And decision-making lessons. That's the important part of it. But the bottom line is this, and you're absolutely right. In the 1990s, the Marine Corps, kind of made this left turn, and everybody started walking around with books and all this shit. Now, I've read as many books as as Mattis has. I have. I mean, I've read all that crap, right? Because unfortunately, I went to the War College and saw and all this stuff, right? And at MSTP, you had to read for research purposes. And having been on the editorial board of the Marine Corps Gazette and all that stuff. So I've read. But the issue is I didn't rely on reading. It just supplemented my experience, my leadership experience. It supplemented my knowledge. It's like taking supplements. Like that's all it is. And if you think you're going to rely on it and you don't go out and practice the art, the profession, you're going to fail. And because things come at you, and there's things that books don't sort of give you the experience, the feel, the calluses that you need on your hands. As I used to tell my lieutenants, you can read Muscle magazine all you want, but unless you go to the weight room and start pumping iron, you ain't going to put on muscle, right? And I had these same lieutenants, they'd walk around with books and all that shit. I said, time to put them away. You're done with school, put away the books, prac app, get out there with your staff NCOs, get out there with their NCOs, make mistakes, learn. If you need advice, come back and see me. Otherwise, go out and do good things. And I think that's so important. And unfortunately, what's happened is we're paying the price for this whole generation of readers, because we had battalion command. I've got pictures of the mute commanders sitting in combat reading a freaking book in the chair on the fob, and I walked by thinking, you got to be shitting me. What kind of example is he setting to the Marines? Now, in his mind, he's thinking, I'm setting a good example because I'm reading and the Marines will think I'm a tactician and all that shit. We ain't got time to read in combat. You really don't. You got to execute. So there's a time to read, there's a time to practice, and there's a time to execute. And you want the type of people that can practice and they can execute. Everybody can freaking read, right? But the retention is so important. That digestion is so important. You digest what you read, go out and practice it, and then go out and execute. Those are the main, the continuum. That's so important. And if you don't do that, if you're just going to read and eat popcorn and sit on the couch, you're going to be a shitty officer at the end of the day, or staff NCO. That's my opinion.
Yeah, I agree with that. I want to get your thought on this. I'm going to share an anecdote here that'll resonate with you, because I was a MUSOC company commander as well. Same thing, compressed timeline. I told you about this in previous episodes, and there's lessons in that too. If you hear Asad talking, you hear me. Asad at the battalion level, me at the company level, you leaders, you're not always going to have the full company, the full squad, the full battalion, the full everything, and do a complete workup. A lot of times you don't get your squad leaders until 30 days before you float, and you're getting ready to go on maximum leave and all of that. So you just got to suck it up and do the best you can with what you have at the time. But I know of no unit ever that was fully staffed up at the start of a BLT workup for float, like 18 months and all that. Good luck if you get the 18 months. And if you do get the 18 months, you're not going to get all of your lieutenants, staff NCOs, squad leaders and all that. You're not going to do that. So you're going to go through a lot of training packages with guys in squad leader roles that aren't going to be your squad leaders, because they're lance corporals and now sergeants are going to come in very late in the game. And guess what? They're wearing the rank, but a lot of those guys are coming off of B billets and all of that, and they're not competent. They haven't kept up with the profession. And there was nothing worse than getting NCOs and staff NCOs in late. That was bad enough. But the fact that they weren't competent infantrymen was worse. And so it's a steep challenge. But I want to talk about this. What I observed in general is, throughout my career, it's easy to talk yourself into and rationalize taking shortcuts in training. And guys that do that often they do the same thing in combat. They rationalize why they really don't need to push a little further, or go out on that patrol, or go into that area because the other unit got shot up and we're not going to touch that, So let me give you an example, Asad. It won't surprise you. So here I am. I'm a MUSOC company commander, and we're going through the MUSOC workup. And, you get rated on, over the horizon, helicopter-borne attacks and all that. So we pass. We stumble through it because I didn't have a good workup, a complete workup. But when we went on that float, we went back to the Gulf, and we got to do a lot of training in Saudi Arabia. We actually went into Oman and all of that. And Asad, because of the squadron commander, it was a composite 53, 46 Cobra. So there's three types of helicopters, as you know. That was a standard mix back then. So in any given assault, my Marines would be in 53s and or 46s, a mixture of both. Every per MUSOC, every attack we did was supposed to be a night assault in the hours of darkness.
Yep.
No. That battalion command, that squadron commander influenced the MU commander and said, well, you know, the desert floor that we're landing on is going to kick up a lot of dust and we haven't been, and he always had an excuse.
Yep.
So I never made a darkness, you know, in the darkness night assault like you would do for real. You know, you're just not going to fly into the jaws of death in daytime. It's going to be nighttime then. This guy wouldn't do it.
Yeah.
I'll tell you why. He was afraid of a training accident. And he was a lieutenant colonel. And I know what he was thinking. If I can get through this deployment without an incident, I'll be a colonel. And it worked for him.
Yes.
Here's what happened, though. After a few of these, and I'm like, what's the deal? The pilots would come to me.
Yes.
Captains and lieutenants. They would say, hey, man, we're so sorry about this. We can do this. We are capable of doing this. I see your frustration in the briefs. It's not us. We can do this. We want to do this. He won't let us do it. And that colonel is agreeing with him. And I got to tell you, that MU commander was a really good, legendary Marine.
Yeah.
And he was no softy, but I don't know whether he got bullshitted by that squadron commander or he said, this guy's trying to tell me something. He's trying to tell me that his pilots aren't up to it. So I'm going to listen to him. And I give that example out there is it just pissed me off.
Yeah, I went through the exact same thing. We could just replicate our experiences. Exactly the same thing. And, squadron commanders are renowned for that. Some of their, actually, we dumped a helicopter on a Pelican landing. The thing lost power and, they ended up destroying it. But after that, he just went, belly up. He didn't want to take any risk. And all that stuff. And it's a shame because, the pilots came to me also and said, hey, we can do it. Yeah. We want to do it. He won't let us do it. And the thing with the MU commander is, they want to get promoted also. So, you've lost one helicopter, you want to lose two because then people are going to start wondering what the hell is going on, right? So they're very risk averse. The Army doesn't have that problem. I'll tell you what, this is, heresy what I'm talking about now, okay? The MAGTF concept and all that horse shit, right? When you're in combat, I don't give a shit if the frickin' Ethiopian Air Force is coming to drop bombs and do gun runs for me. I really don't care. And you know who was there every time? The Army and the Air Force. Okay, and here's the beauty about it. Because our zipperhead squadron commander, I won't take his name, but he knows who, you're listening out there. You know me. He wouldn't allow his pilots to fly split section. They always have to fly, as a section, right? The Army would fly a split section. So they'd leave an Apache on top of you, covering you, giving you support, and the other one would go refuel, come back, and then they'd rotate, right? So they're allowed to do that. And it was amazing. And then the way the joint air now works, troops in contact, you go on the squadron common freak, you say troops in contact, they literally have now in the Joint Operations Center, that this alarm bell goes off and a red light goes off. We got troops in contact. Everybody focuses on that, and they start sending, support to you. So all this horse shit about, you got to, get on the ATO cycle 24 hours ahead and all this nonsense. Hey, I can't read the stars. I don't know when I'm going to get in a gunfight. I know I'm going to get in one, but I don't know the exact time, right? And when I need air, I expect it to be there. And as soon as you said troops in contact, every aircraft around would come in, and you had more than enough aviation assets to do it. So I kind of just blew away and I love the pilots that we had, the young guys. They're awesome.
Yeah.
Hats off to you. But it just their squadron commander did them a damn disservice. Bunch of damn cowards.
Yeah.
And you got Marines down there, 3-4 months risking their lives every freaking day, and this guy's worried about an airframe of a 46. Who gives a shit about a 46? It's equal to a soda can with a propeller on it. That's what I think.
And so I knew you were going to say that. I didn't know you had a similar experience. It does not surprise me. And so I knew if this and there was some stuff going on in Lebanon at that time, even on that float when we went back to the Gulf.
Yeah.
And everybody told me, the colonel is much harder on you in confirmation briefs than the mechanized or the boat company commanders. Like, he's really hard on you.
Yeah.
And the BLT commander said he is harder on you, and I'll tell you why. Because he's told me if we do anything out here, there's the higher probabilities it's going to be the helo company.
Yeah, absolutely.
This guy is good. So yes, do I make sure he is airtight with his plan and all that, and challenge him more than the other guys? Yes. I didn't know it was that visible, so I'll try and affect that a little bit. But my point with all of this, Asad, not to bash Marine aviation, because in many cases they do great, but there's also artillery commanders who don't want to shoot. They don't want to shoot. They don't want it too close. There's facts that won't call in because, that's, you would have never got that mission that you talked about in part 2 with the elevation difference. You would have never got that with some people. And it wasn't just that guy, I don't know where he is, Dubai or Bahrain. There's other guys in the chain of command that would have balked at that because it might not turn out well. And they're arguing with a guy in contact right there. No, that's me. I'm not going to kill myself. Drop the bomb and all of that. Yeah. So we got arty guys that won't shoot. We got aviation leaders that won't risk anything. And not every battalion commander, not even close to it, was Asad Khan. We've got guys that were in charge of units throughout all wars that are timid and they don't have the right kind of aggressiveness. And astute commanders like Patton, and we had a guy in Vietnam called Ray Davis, Medal of Honor from Korea. I personally talked to him. These guys were famous for relieving battalion commanders who weren't up for the job. Patton relieved division commanders a dime a dozen until he found the young crop that could do it. Because not everybody that started the war wearing the stars could do it and all of that. So what we're really trying to teach the youngsters here is what we've already said. Don't be enamored by what's up here on somebody's collar. Don't put too much stock into what's on their chest and uniform, ribbons and medals and all of that, because you know what? That guy might have been a kick-ass platoon commander. Using Afghanistan. We've got guys that are colonels now, lieutenant colonels, that were bona fide heroic leaders, silver stars, bronze stars, 3 Purple Hearts. But that doesn't necessarily mean that great platoon commander in Helmand Province is now going to be a kick-ass battalion commander. Yeah. People change. They become absorbed in the system and all of that. So we're just trying to tell people not to be shocked by it. Any last comments on this topic?
Yeah, I mean, I just want to clarify one thing. The point that you brought up, and you think back to Operation Eagle Claw, right? And why that happened. It happened because of that mindset, right? And but you got to deal with it. You got to deal with the brownouts. You have to deal with it. And if you're not going to deal with it, if you're going to ignore it, when the time comes and you got a no shit mission going on, and that commander doesn't have a choice, you got to launch, and your pilots haven't trained for those conditions. Guess what? You're putting them at risk. So the best thing to do is train for these situations. I'll give you an example. We had a real live, a case where a couple of vehicles went off down in off a cliff and stuff. A bunch of my Afghan militia got hurt. Nighttime, we're calling for medevacs. Nobody's flying. And, and one of the reasons was because they're Afghans. And that really pissed me off. They're part of my unit. And I got on the hook and I said, I want a freaking medevac now. I don't give a shit if they're Afghans or not. Guess what? Next, if you don't send me a fucking medevac, I'm going to shoot myself and then you'll have to send one. So figure it out. So all of a sudden they launch. I'm serious. So they launched the medevacs, right? And the first 46 comes in and all of a sudden waves off. Brownout, right? The next one comes in behind it, and I hear this crunching, engines grinding and all that stuff, and I'm thinking, holy shit, we just crashed another helicopter, right? And comes in and, lands. And I was in shock that the helicopter was still there, right? Blades turning, so I go running up to, tell the pilot, great job. It's a woman pilot. She brought it in. I'm not going to take her name, but, huge respect. And I was telling my Afghan militia leader, that's a woman that landed that helicopter, and he was in awe of it, right? So, I use it as a learning point. So you really have to allow your pilots or any of your subordinates to exercise and practice what we preach. And you know what? And you got to try to mitigate the risk as much as you can. So maybe that squadron commander could have done daytime landings in brownout, and then maybe reduce daylight times, visibility times, and then work their way to nighttime. But the notion that you can't do it at nighttime is just complete horseshit. That guy should have been taken off and planked right off the LHA that you were on. Honestly, God, we don't need people like that in the Marine Corps. And unfortunately, these people rise up to become colonels and generals, and no wonder we got some of these issues that we got going on right now. Yeah. So that's that point, right? And the other point that you're talking about at the end of the day, I think is critical because it really. I can't emphasize enough. I know you're the leadership master. I know this. You've written books on it. You've practiced leadership. You're the repository of leadership, right? And there's nobody better out there. And the only reason you did that is because you came in as a private and you worked your way up. Up to a major Lethbridge trophy. You've written books on it, and you left the Marine Corps on your own terms because the Marine Corps was changing. And we really haven't talked about that part either, right? But you left at a good time. You left with your head up high, and now you're teaching young officers and staff NCOs and NCOs about leadership. And I think that's so important. These things are good. Every circumstance is different. I can't tell you enough. Preparation is the most important thing. It's just like a boxer. It's just like a UFC fighter. If you don't train every day and you're not committed to it, and you don't go out and spar, which means doing the dust landings, you're going to fail, and you're going to fail miserably. And the sad part is when you fail, you're going to have casualties. And then the young Marines get, missing limbs and wounded. I just did an episode today, and it blows my mind, and you'll just have to see it. And I talk about Sergeant Vargas Andrews. He lost an arm and a leg because nobody gave him the authority to engage the guy that he believed was the terrorist with the backpack on that blew himself up. Nobody had the balls. The battalion commander even said, well, wait one, and he just, it just blows my mind. You got to trust your Marines. You got to let them exercise their judgment. So I think that's so important. If you want to go into casualties, I'll talk about casualties. Yeah, we took 40-some casualties, right? But most of them were ambulatory, right? But the beauty about it, and I'll tell you this much, not one of them, because the reason I brought up Sergeant Vigiani was because he set the tempo. Not one of our casualties wanted to get evacuated. I had young Marines get shot up, and they said, "Sir, I want to, get your ass out of here." Or we had the triage guys fall on us that sent them back to triage, right? And but that's the type of moxie, that's the type of tough, and even my Afghans were like that. I'll tell you about Nazir, my young Afghan, right? He got shot right off my vehicle. We had so many people, people right on top of the vehicle in the middle of a freaking ambush. He gets shot off my vehicle, and once we consolidate and everything, I'm looking around. I didn't know he got shot off. So I'm like, where's Nazir at? And some of the Marines said, sir, he got shot. And I thought he got scared and ran off. So I said, bullshit, bring him to me. And they drag him, right? So the corpsman's got an IV in him, and they drag him to me. And I felt like shit, right? Because the kid did get shot. And so normally I'd put $100 in the Afghan's pocket. They go off in the medevac, you never see him again. Nazir, because I knew him, I put $200 in his pocket. I said, hey, great job, son. Medevac's coming, we'll send you home. 2 weeks later, our helicopters land for resupply. Guess who comes up? Nazir on crutches. And I'm like, what the hell are you doing here? He goes, sir, I came back. I said, why? He said, sir, it's my duty. I said, you got to be shitting me. You want to go back out there with us? He said, yes, sir. So I said, okay, get in the vehicle. And my medical officer comes over. He goes, sir, you can't do that. His wound is still open. He may get gangrene. I said, let me tell you something, doc. Okay, that's exactly the type of Marines we want, the example we want for the Marines to see. That's courage. And if he gets gangrene, I'll court-martial your ass. So you make sure he's taken care of, and he's going out there with us. That's all there is to it. I don't want to talk about it, And Nazir did great. And Nazir is now in America. He's doing great. We were able to have him, immigrate to the U.S. He's got, young kids, and he owns a gas station right by Mount Vernon. So, I'm real proud of him as well. So my point being is, so casualties happen, but these young kids are like freaking lions. They're wounded. They still want to come back, and they want to fight with you because they don't want to let you down. They don't want to let their brother Marines down, right? But then there's other casualties that bother the shit out of you, and it's still to this day, it bothers me, because we want to fight as a MAGTF. We want to show the Army that we're a brigade-size element and all this happy horse shit that we do. Yeah. And we had checkpoint 231 out there, right? 60 kilometers away from me, where I was, 60 kilometers away from where the MEU FOB was, right? There's this isolated checkpoint with the LAR platoon sitting there. And I used to argue with the MEU commander, every time I saw him. I said, these guys are uncovered out there. We can't, reinforce them in time and all this shit. And he basically told me, I got them. You worry about your own shit, right? And sure as shit, they on movement to contact one night, they get ambushed, and I lose Corporal Ron Payne. And it didn't have to frickin' happen. I could have gotten militia down there for $5 a day. 20 of those guys, $100, for $3,000 a month. But the problem is we want to show the CJTF commanders, hey, I've got these maneuver elements all over the place. And this is just a frickin' dog and pony show. And it really fucking pisses me off when officers sacrifice our Marines' lives and just waste them away. Because I'll tell you what, if that was his son, he wouldn't have frickin' done it. And it bothers me. And watch my episode today on Sentinel, because when Congressman Corey Mills asked him to turn around and talk to Sergeant Vargas Andrews, he didn't. He didn't have the moral courage to say, you know what, I'm sorry, or something, or even to the Gold Star families. And that's not leadership. I don't know what the hell that is, honest to God. It's just like calling every Marine a frickin' rifleman. You can't call these people leaders. They're not frickin' leaders. They're donkeys. I shit you not. You cannot have donkeys leading lions. That's the fundamental problems. So don't misuse the word. And I caution you on this also, Mike. Don't misuse, don't tarnish the word leadership and apply it to these idiots, because they're not. That's all I got.
Just some clarification. The anecdote you're talking about, Corey Mills, the congressman, who was he talking to turn around?
He was talking to McKenzie. He's talking to McKenzie and Milley. We're in the congressional hearing in March of 2024. And I've got a whole episode coming out on this one. It'll be out tomorrow. I'll put it up tomorrow. Yeah. And there's a clip in there that I found. And, Corey Mills asked him, do you want to turn around and address, Sergeant Vargas Andrews? And he said, no. I mean, you got to be shitting me.
Yeah.
I mean, what kind of, they're not leaders. I'm telling you, don't misuse the word.
Yeah, I hear you. I agree with that. I'll look at that episode. And for those people who don't know, Asad has a very popular podcast. You'll find it on YouTube. It's called Sentinel. Just Google Sentinel Podcast, Asad Khan. It'll bring you right to it. Great episodes. You'll learn a lot. I want to share an anecdote relative to the kid, that Nazir, that came back and all of that. This is pretty similar. And again, I'm sharing this to show these young leaders, if you do things right, your troops, soldiers, Marines, SEALs, whatever, they will bond with that unit, and literally, barring death, they don't want to leave. They don't want to leave.
Yeah.
Sir, can't you just put, I know I lost my lower leg. Can't you just put a tourniquet on it? I can still shoot.
Johnny Hart.
Shoot. Johnny of the Heart, you know? And so in Desert Storm, a couple of weeks before we were going to go through the berm, now we're moving through the desert, we're getting closer to Kuwait, my first sergeant came in and said, "Hey, sir, bad news. Corporal Cervantes' brother was killed in a car wreck, and the Red Cross says the parents want him to come back from the funeral." Cervantes worked in the COC as part of the weapons company crew and all. Great Marine. And so obviously I had to call him in. I had a little CP tent by myself, and he walked in. I said, "Cervantes, look, I'm just going to get right to it. I'm so sorry. Your brother was killed yesterday in a car accident.
Yeah.
And your parents want you to come home and attend the funeral." And of course, he was just stunned. And I said, "Listen, I'm sorry. We're going to get you out of here. Your gear is already being taken. We're going to, we got a medevac for you to get out." So the point is, he went home. We keep moving through the day. I didn't think I'd ever see him again. And I told him,
Right.
"Go home." Because he only had two children in that company, that family, Cervantes and his brother, and the brother just died. I said, "Go home, take care of your parents. The last thing they need is to worry about their other son." Never thought I'd see him again. I would have never, I wouldn't have thought less of him. So we're in the desert, and this is a couple days before we go over the berm. And we're looking and we're staging all that. And so my gunny says, "Sir, look at this." And off in the desert, I see a Marine
Walking.
running.
Yeah.
He was running because he hitched a ride.
Yeah.
And we're like, no gear on him, just desert camis. He's running. And we're like, who the hell? And, we're standing up like, what the hell? The guy lost? The guy go crazy from another unit? Is he deserting or whatever? It's definitely not an Iraqi prisoner. He's surrendering. And we gets closer, and it's Cervantes.
Yeah.
And the gunny said, "Sir, shit, it's Corporal Cervantes."
Yeah.
And he was right. And I get chills saying this.
Yeah, I'm getting them too.
That kid, I didn't get choked up. That kid ran into us, and he was all sweaty and all that. And Asad, he ran into us, and I ran toward that kid, and I picked him up in a bear hug, took his feet off the ground, hugged him like no other.
Yeah.
And put him down, and I'm like, "Cervantes, it's good to see you."
Yeah.
And he said, "Sir, I couldn't stay away. I had to come back. I wasn't going to miss this. I want to be with my buddies."
Yeah. Absolutely.
And he did magnificently. Retired, he switched over at some point to Intel, and he became a very highly revered master gunnery sergeant in the Intel space. He did a lot of stuff away from the Marine Corps and all of that, I think in South America, South and Central America, because he had the language and the look and all of that. So my point is this: that's nothing to do with my leadership, and it's just leaders, if you're doing it right, you will breed a sense of bonding and loyalty and camaraderie in that unit that there's no manual for. There's hey, if you do A, B, and C, all I can say, I get your thought on this, Asad, is humans in general, when it comes to leadership, the newest person in a Marine or Army unit can tell if their leader, their squad leader, their staff sergeant, the platoon sergeant, their lieutenant, their colonel, does he really give a shit about me? They all say they do, but does this guy truly love me in the right way and have my best interests at heart. And if they can say yes to those questions, they will follow you into the jaws of death. Absolutely. And I know you know that. And so the challenge to these youngsters out there is to lead well and do it. And I used to say to lieutenants at the basic school, you're an officer. You look down. The fact that you have a commission from the president says you are a Marine officer. You'll know that you're doing well when your Marines start referring to you as our lieutenant. Yep. Or my lieutenant. Well, my lieutenant or our lieutenant. That's a term of affection that you have to earn. Yep. Otherwise, you're just their officer. Loyalty. There's a big difference between an officer and a lieutenant, and an 06 and a colonel. I used to say that guy is not a sergeant major. He's an E9. Yeah. Because in my day, it's become fashionable now, but in my day, no Marine would refer to themselves by the pay grade. Hey, yeah. I am not an E5. I am a Marine Corps sergeant. Don't you ever forget that. There's a big difference between me and an Air Force E5. We're not a pay grade. I'm a Marine NCO, that kind of stuff, So anyway, I will shut up on that. One last thing, Asad, is there any kind, we're at the end here. You shared so many anecdotes. Is there any particular additional war story or anecdote that sticks in your mind today that you still think about it and you want to share it? And if you do, there's probably some lessons in it.
Well, I think there's two of them that we kind of talked about that, when we went up to 10,000 feet and everybody's recommending that we don't go up there. But I knew from local villagers' intelligence that the enemy had gone up there and, being the Ulysses Grant model, once I latch on, I'm not going to back down. So we went up there with the, and then the B-1 strike that I'd mentioned. So I think that will always resonate with me for a couple of reasons. One is that, by going up there when everybody told me not to, even my OPSO and I, Brian Christmas, and I had, a headbanging session. He wanted to go there. I wanted to leave him behind and all that. And, and you got to love it. You got to love it. And so that's probably will always remain with me because it was at one of those moments where I had to make a decision, life and death decision. And also, and as I said, an officer, a commander, a leader has got to be willing to die for his Marines or sacrifice his career for his Marines. Those two things are non-negotiable. If you're not willing to die in combat with your Marines, you're not a leader. If you're not willing to, mortgage your career and just say, the hell with it, to be a better leader, then to me, you're not a true leader. Because those two things are absolutes, right? Your life is very precious, and you have to put it on the same table, on the same docket as your Marines. And then your career is very important, and you have to be willing to let go of your career to be a better leader. So I think those two things are very, very important. And the second one is the lesson that I learned, when we fought for 11 days through these mountains, and we got to Deschopin, and all of a sudden we got extended to go back, back for another 2 weeks and whatnot. And that will always remain in my mind because, I was hurt for my Marines after what I put them through, and all these fat freaking pogues sitting at the FOB had no idea what the hell I put them through because they weren't there. And then they just, willy-nilly decision, hey, we got extended and we'll be the longest MEU in combat, and that was all this happy horse shit. And I truly suffered for my Marines. That's what hurt me the most. And I will never forgive these sons of bitches for that. I'm telling you this right now. And I'm sorry for swearing, but I will never, ever forgive them for that. Screw my career. I didn't really give a shit, I mean, I walked away with the Marine Corps, my head held high, and I'll tell you what, there ain't a single person out there, including the ones that judge me, Amos, McKenzie, and all these freaking, pogues, they couldn't have done what 1-6 did in those mountains. Quite simply, it's not because of the tactics and the Marines, because the Afghans wouldn't follow them. It's that simple. They wouldn't know how to handle the Afghans. They would have so many freaking war crimes they wouldn't know what to do with it. So, and so that, to me, that's the most important thing. I took an infantry battalion into the harshest place in Afghanistan, and I brought my Marines home back absent one. And that still bothers me because these stupid ass decisions. And as long as we got these stupid people who claim to be leaders in the Marine Corps, we'll never get ahead. And I'll tell you this much, okay, mark my words, okay, the Marine Corps was always known for its mental toughness and its physical toughness. And now you're looking at a lot of these Army units that are getting as tough or tougher than the Marine Corps. So we got to keep that in mind. We used to be the landing force for the U.S. Navy. Right? You remember that? Now, who's the landing force for the U.S. Navy? Navy SEALs are. They took the mission away from us, right? Who's doing all the NEOs and these in extremis hostage rescue and also the contingency missions? The Army is, because they can fly in packages, the ready brigades, far quicker than the Marine amphibious, the tugboats can get there. So we really need to take a hard look at that. And these leaders need to take a hard look at that and see what the new Marine Corps of the future is going to look like. And if they forego mental toughness and physical fitness for all this happy horseshit, whiz-bang drone nonsense, and and they think they're going to do the next Island Happen campaign against China and gave up all our combat power, America's 911 force, we're headed for a disaster. And I'll tell you what, we're going to be, somebody's going to be talking about us about 200 years from now, saying, hey, these are the last of the Marines, last of the Mohicans. So, I implore to the Marine Corps leadership, we have a great formula in the Marine Corps. Don't shit can it for this whiz-bang stuff. Stay true to our what bread and butter missions, and stay true to mental and physical toughness. We're not as mentally and physically tough as we claim to be. I've seen it firsthand. And in my travels, I talk to Marines all the time. All day long, I'm getting messages from Marines. And the other thing you said, very important, I also implore the officers, young officers, you want to learn, go read the comments. Go to Reddit, read the comments. Go to these podcasts and read the comments, because that's a mirror in your face, and it's telling you what kind of leadership the officer corps is. And a lot of Marines are not happy with it. And they've got some great vignettes and feedback that they're giving us, and we need to listen to them, because they're not going to tell you face to face because they're scared shitless of getting charged under the UCMJ, but they do leave comments. And there are some shitbirds. I get all that, right? But there's a lot of great comments in it. And a lot of the ideas that I get is by reading these comments. And it makes me think, and I come back with a podcast. So that's in a nutshell. I really appreciate you bringing me onto this show. And I hope, I've been able to share some stuff. And please don't, misconstrue my intensity. I've always been like this. I've never been any different, right? I'm passionate about it. And the reason I'm not being critical of the Marine Corps, the reason I'm bringing all this stuff is because I love the Marine Corps. I love being a Marine more than anybody out there. I'm telling you, Johnny the Hard, all that shit. Hey, I am fucking modern Johnny the Hard. I'll tell you that right now, okay? And that's the way you got to approach life. And everything you do it to the best of your damn abilities, and raise a standard for others to aspire to. And as long as we do that, I think people will consider you to be a leader. But if you're going to be one of those guys that, keeps his green T-shirt untucked because you want to hide your gut, Marines ain't going to follow you. They just, walk away laughing.
I agree. We're totally aligned on that, Asad. And, I think some current Marines, one thing I notice is that today's Marines, per their generation, the younger two generations do not take criticism well.
They don't.
Combined with, because they don't get it a lot as children and in schools and all that. They have a lack of accountability because that's the way society is. They don't like being held accountable. And in addition to not liking, not being able to take criticism, they think that they have all the answers And so I guarantee you there's guys currently now wearing stars and oak leaves and first sergeants that are looking at you saying, well, I'm sure he was good in his day, but he's passe now. He doesn't know. He's not in tune with the modern Marine Corps, the modern threat. They think they know everything, and that's a dangerous thing, my friend. And so we're totally aligned on that. And, I'm all over social media. I follow it a lot. You mentioned Reddit, and I will say this to the young leaders out there. You probably know, because you're younger and you're of that social media generation, you know what Reddit is, Reddit. And they have individual forums called subreddits, subs. And there's one, and each one has an R and a slash in it. So there's r/USMC. Go on that Reddit, and there's a huge mixture of active and former and retired Marines on that, but usually younger guys. A lot of good ones, a lot of shitbirds that you can tell weren't all that good. They just hate the Marine Corps, so they're not saying anything good. You will see some anecdotes of what they endured at the Lance Corporal and Sergeant and PFC and Lieutenant level.
Yep.
That will shame you. And there's active duty guys on there saying, well, now that happened to you 20 years ago. Let me tell you what our colonel made us do last week, or what my staff sergeant makes us do, or his style of leadership. You can learn a lot. I know you know this and believe this, Asad. Young leaders out there, we're trying to provide good examples to you, but you can learn a lot by reading about terrible leadership. And the Marine Corps is full of human beings, and human nature is such that the Marine Corps has its share of completely toxic, self-serving, dishonest, lack of character leaders, and they could give a shit about those Marines. You talking to a guy like Asad who loved his Marines. There are people out there that view their Marines no differently than cattle.
Yep.
All these guys can do is get me in trouble. So I'm going to clamp down hard. And I got to tell you, when I read some of the conditions that these guys have had to live in, or what they've been exposed to, I know it's always gone on. But I wasn't exposed to it long ago because there was no internet and all that. Now, these kids can tell the truth on you, good or bad. Now, they're also on there saying that guy was a lion. We loved that captain. He was great. And he was followed by a complete sissy, and he, blah, blah, blah. Everything fell apart and all that. So I'll leave you with that. Asad, I want to let you out of here. I know that you are in the process of publishing a book. Yep. And this episode's going to be out there quite a long time and all of that. So I know it's not published yet. So tell us, what's the title of the book? What's it going to be about? Where are you going to publish it? Because it's not published now, but a year from now, someone watching this is going to say, man, I like this guy. Let me find that book, So tell us about it.
Well, before I go into that, I just want you mentioned something I think is very important. If you go back to the first military history book that's written, called The Peloponnesian War by Thucydides, you read it, right? First book written, first-hand observer writing about it, to come fast forward to my book, okay? And all those books that are written in between and all that history that's there, one thing hasn't changed. Technology's changed, tactics may change, but human nature never changes. So that has remained constant throughout history, right? So the same flaws and attributes that humans have, leaders, good and bad, are all throughout history. So, the important thing is listen to, I hate saying this, people with experience, gray beard and stuff, because we're not saying it for our own benefit. We're saying it so you learn those lessons that we've learned, that we're trying to impart on you. So I think that's so important. And as a result of that, for 20 years, I mentioned this before, that I just kept quiet. I wasn't on social media. I just didn't want to mess around with any of this shit. I was too busy with my life. And then the incident happened with, obviously, with the MEU. I got relieved, and I went on and had another life going on, and that turned out quite well. And then all of a sudden, the Kabul withdrawal happened, and it shocked me that it was the same guy, McKenzie. MEU commander, McKenzie, CENTCOM commander. And that burnt my gut. And then Lieutenant Colonel Schiller came out and all he wanted was accountability. Now, we can debate the fact, was he right or wrong? That's regardless. But he was just calling for accountability. They threw him in the brig, held him accountable. But for all the people that created the debacle, the 13 Marine soldiers, sailors that were killed, 40 wounded, hundreds of Afghans, 10 local innocent Afghans killed in a drone strike, 7 of them children. Nobody's been held accountable for that. Nobody, right? So that ate at me. And the reason it ate at me is because when I was leaving 2nd Marine Division, I told my commanding general, I said, you keep promoting this guy, I guarantee you one day he's going to make a big mess. And you know what? Unfortunately, I wasn't wrong. I wish I was, but the mess happened. And now we got to hold people accountable. So that lit a fire in me. So I went on LinkedIn, social media, started putting posts, you and I connected. And then people said, hey, why are you not writing a book? And I wrote one in 2006, primarily therapeutic, and to record everything that I had, because I've, kept notes and all that stuff. And so I pulled it out, I dusted it off. The book's name is Betrayal of Command. It goes into, brief overview of my early Marine Corps career. And then it goes into my first tour in the global war on terrorism, when by, I believe, 24 September, I was in Pakistan and then Afghanistan and ran around there, did some, opened the embassy and some special missions and all that stuff. And then I came back and, was slated, obviously, prior to leaving, 9/11, I was slated for command, went down to 2nd Marine Division, spent time, built up 1-6. I talk about, go heavily into the training part of it. And then 1-6's experience in combat. And then I tell my story of what really happened, what led to my relief. And then I talk about some lessons of how to ensure that this doesn't happen again. In terms of having a 3-tier system for officers, to make sure that investigations are impartial, and, to make sure that we're promoting the right people. That's so important, to make so the Marines are being properly led in combat by lions rather than donkeys. So that's basically my whole genesis of the book, and hopefully. A lot of people have asked me for it. If you and quite honestly, I'm going to put it. I'll put it on Amazon, because initially I went through publishers and they didn't like my language, didn't like my tone. And it's my book; those are my words. So I'm not listening to some fat lady in sneakers telling me how to edit my damn book. That's my words. If you're offended by it, so be it. Throw it away. But if you like the lessons in there and you agree with something what I'm saying. You keep it. I remember as a young lieutenant, I read About Face. Remember David Hackworth? Remember him?
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
Okay, it was seminal. Those lessons still resonate with me. And the sad part is nothing has freaking changed 40 years later. We're still what Hackworth is talking about. The book is out there. I've got that YouTube channel, which started by happenstance, really, called Sentinel 360, one word. Come out there. I put up some very interesting podcasts. It's not the usual vet bro stuff. I'm not pitching anything. I'm not trying to sell anything. It's just me talking and then sharing experiences and some really good, interesting ideas, and calling out people that need to be held accountable. And there's a shitloads of these donkeys running around the military, I'm telling you. And we need to, and I'm glad. And listen, I'm apolitical. I really don't give a shit. But whoever's in charge in the White House, I want them to do well. If they do well, the country will do well. I just think simply, right? And I'm glad that there's an effort being made to clean out this residue of these fake people that we got running around claiming to be leaders. We need to clean them out. We need to bring in this fresh blood that are lions and change the nature of the military. Because I'm telling you, we're running out of time. And if you haven't noticed, last point, and I'll shut up, is China just celebrated the anniversary of the winning the World War II in the Pacific Theater, right? They had this big parades and all that stuff. Look at how the Chinese are marching compared to look at how we marched It's mind-blowing stuff. And it's not just about marching. I've been to China. China is in the 22nd century. We're falling back into the 19th century. And if we don't get a grip on this slide that we're on, I'm afraid for our nation. I'm afraid for the future of our children. So we all got to get together and focus on what's important. And nothing is going to get done without proper leadership and ethical leadership and making sure that Americans and America is first. I travel throughout the world, right? Throughout the world I travel. Other countries are moving at a rapid rate. Other countries are providing homes for their people. Where I'm sitting right now, they give their locals free homes. They give them homes. They have free medical. They've got free education. They get travel allowances. That's how you take care of your population. Okay, and that's the way we got to take care of America. And I'm not ever going to run for politics, so that's not my agenda. My point being is we can do a lot better, and it all starts with leadership. And so what Mike has got going on is powerful stuff, and we need people to get in line and listen to him and listen to what he's saying. Go into his books. I read them often, and just become a better person, a better human being, and be a better leader. And at the end of the day, there's a guy that used to talk about all this stuff, going all the way back to Jesus Christ, right? He talked about leadership, didn't he? And I'm not religious either. I'm just saying it. So it's the same parables that he talked about that we need to apply to ourselves and our lives and spread amongst everybody else. On that note, Mike, I appreciate it. I loved being on here, and I hope I didn't really piss off your viewers with my bluntness.
I think just the opposite. And the best compliment I can give you, Asad, and I've given you several, all well-deserved, is that Johnny the Hard would have been very proud of his battalion in your hands.
Oh, yeah.
Because he would have said, well, there's obviously a Genghis the Hard now.
Yeah.
And you two would have got along well, cut from the same mold, my friend, with the respect of the Marines and all of that. So I thank you for these 3 episodes. They're great. I predict they're going to be wildly popular, very well-traveled, and I humbly ask you to consider coming back for more when your book gets published. We'll do an episode
Anytime.
on that. But
yeah, I'd love to.
There's other topics that I know if I can get you started on it, the flow of wisdom and insights will be unlimited and all that. So I'll reach out to you, and if you have time, would love to have you back.
Yes, sir. Absolutely. I loved it. I enjoyed it. As I always do. I love talking to you. We're
absolutely.
We're soulmates.
Yes, absolutely, my friend. Well, listen, audience, this wraps up Asad Khan Part 3. Again, please go back on the Combat Leadership Podcast YouTube page and look at Asad Khan Part 1 and 2. And as always, leaders, you can learn a lot from these. Please share them with everybody so they can grow our increasingly growing tribe here. Spread the word and all of that, especially with guys like Asad. He deserves a wide audience. So please, please forward it. And so with that, have a great day, leaders. And as always, go forth and lead well.
We hope you've enjoyed this podcast. Please subscribe, rate, review, and recommend to your friends. Please visit our website at combatleadership.com. Until next time, remember the words of the ancient philosopher Plato. Only the dead have seen the end of war.